I am an anthropologist. Both in my teaching and research, I also aim to engage with issues of public concern. I write for and give interviews to the media. In one such interview with Huffington Post, which I did in 2018, I commented on those Hindus who religiously regard cows as holy mother and who have recently killed many Muslims in India on the allegation of eating beefs or smuggling cows. I compared the Hindu organization engaged in lynching with Ku Klux Klan in the US. I also described the public lynching of Muslims and Dalits as acts of terror. While many appreciated my perspective, others attacked me with Islamophobic abuse. I was labeled a scholar terrorist, a communist, Islamist, jihadist, anti-India, anti-national, a scoundrel, and more. Let me also take you back to my PhD fieldwork, which I did in Aligarh, a town close to New Delhi, national capital of India. In early 2002, over 2,000 Muslims were massacred in Gujarat, whose then chief minister was Narendra Modi, currently India's prime minister. At that time, the US had denied Modi a visa for his role in the anti-Muslim pogrom. After the pogrom, a conference was held in Aligarh. A speaker at the conference described the killing of Muslims as follows. The killers hacked Muslims to death because they considered Muslims as tenants living in India rather than India being their home as it is of Hindus and others. These two stories that I shared with you exemplify Islamophobia as well as Domophilia. Most of you are familiar with Islamophobia as a term, which is also used in the media. However, Domophilia may be new to you. Several years ago, as I was doing my research on Islamophobia, I coined this term Domophilia. So let me unpack it for you. Domophilia is domo plus philia. In Latin, domo means home and philia means love. Thus, Domophilia is love for home, which for most people have become coterminous with nation state. Islamophobia consists of two words, Islam plus phobia. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, phobia means extreme irrational fear. Thus, Islamophobia means extreme irrational fear of Islam. Now, how are Islamophobia and Domophilia as twins? So let me explain this. Many think that Islamophobia began with the September 11 terrorist attack. This is not entirely the case. In one account, Islamophobia is actually deeply connected to the French imperialism. In its modern usage, Islamophobia was used first in French as Islamophobie during World War I. In 1918, Etienne Dine and Suleiman bin Ibrahim used this term in their book titled The Life of Muhammad, the Prophet of Allah. They used this term to show Europe's hostility to Islam. In the book, they also criticized what they called pseudo-scientific Islamophobia of the Orientalist and clerical Islamophobia of the missionaries. In another account, it was the Runnymede Trust Commission in Britain which used Islamophobia first in 1994. Notably, the Commission used this term under the subtitle of Anti-Semitism and Other Forms of Racism. In 1997, the Commission used it more elaborately and also defined it as hatred and hostility to Islam and Muslims. Surely, there is more to Islamophobia. One key question is, why did the Runnymede Trust Commission use it in 1994? It is my argument that the Commission did it because Islamophobia is deeply connected to the New World Order and its politics. What I mean by this is that the West identified Islam as new enemy of the New World Order, which George W. Bush Sr. announced on September 11, 1990, after the collapse of the USSR. Of course, during the Cold War, communism was the main enemy. With the death of communism, a new enemy was needed. In 1990, General Colin Powell remarked, "I'm running out of demons, I'm running out of enemies." 2 years later, Samuel Huntington, a professor of political science at Harvard University, published Clash of Civilization. According to Huntington, future wars would be fought not along national but civilizational lines. Taking religion as the core of civilization, Huntington identified 8 major civilizations in the world, while he predicted that wars would be fought among many civilizations. For him, the key clash would be between Islam and the West. As he put it, the underlying problem for the West is not Islamic fundamentalism, it is Islam. And Islam has bloody borders. Huntington was not the first one to use the phrase clash of civilization. Bernard Lewis, a well-known Orientalist who provided the intellectual ammunition to the Iraq War, had used it as early as 1964. Girilal Jain, an Indian journalist wedded to the cause of Hindu fundamentalism, had also used it in 1988. The debate on Islamophobia in Europe often gets connected to the subject of Muslim immigration. However, Muslims are not the only immigrants, nor is Islamophobia limited simply to Europe, North America, Australia, or New Zealand, where Muslims are immigrants. Islamophobia equally operates in India, China, Thailand, Egypt, and many other places where Muslims are clearly not immigrants. Why this is so? This is because, as I argued earlier, Islamophobia is connected and it emanates from the need of the New World Order to have an enemy, a global one. This necessity is such that nation states such as India and China, which are otherwise rival to each other, they become friends to depict Islam and Muslims as enemy. Stereotypes about Islam, indeed about other religions too, have existed for a long time. What gives force to Islamophobia is that these stereotypes are connected to the New World Order and its need for a global enemy. In my view, the contention that Islamophobia is integral to New World Order needs to be seen in conjunction with the ideas and notion of homemaking and the love for home. What I mean by love for home is love for the nation state. Since the 19th century, nation state and home have largely become synonyms. Liberalism and democracy, they are also largely national and territorial. That is to say, the love for liberal democratic nation state and home may go hand in hand. It is not simply that nation state and home have become synonyms. Nearly everything else is also highly nationalized. Knowledge is no exception. Disciplines like sociology and history, they aim to historicize and sociologize nation state. However, under the impact of nationalism, these disciplines themselves became highly nationalist. Think of names of some of the journals: Australian Journal of Political Science, British Journal of Sociology, American Anthropologist, German History, Contribution to Indian Sociology. Even the air stands nationalized. Think of the names of the airlines: Air India, Air France, British Airways, Turkish Airlines, and many more examples can be given. This fantasy of the nation state as home is based on the idea of a pure, cozy nation state imagined as home, and how the heart supposedly longs for this home. One powerful expression of such a longing is the song titled "I Still Call Australia Home" by Peter Allen, a famous Australian singer. The song imagines Australia as a home largely in relation to imperial centers like London and New York, as well as the vast sea and the nature. However, Allen's song's imagination of Australia is not simply as a home, it is also a racial fantasy, because Australia is imagined as a white home, and as such, it is silent about how this white home was built by demolishing the homes of the Aboriginal population. Think of another example. What is currently called BBC Radio 4 was previously called BBC program run under the service called Home Service as opposed to Foreign Service. This juxtaposition of us, home, and them on the other is telling. To think of the nation state actually without its other is impossible, and this other is both internal as well as external. To the German philosopher Johann Fichte, interior frontiers were the essence of the nation. Violence is constitutive of this notion and idea of home coterminous with nation state. In Latin, domo means home, and this home is imagined both as family and house as a moral idea, not simply house as a physical entity. And the derivative domi means peace, and it is contrasted with milite, which means war. Derived from the common Indo-European term domer in Latin, domam in Greek, and damayati in Sanskrit all mean to do violence, to tame, to subdue. And the opposite of domo, home, is foris or foras, namely strangers or outsiders. What connects home to the outside is war. Reinhard Koselleck, the famous German historian of ideas, has observed that after the end of religious war in Europe, Europeans diverted war to the outside so as to prevent civil war at home. This exactly is the notion of home which we can also see in the 2000 US law called Homeland Security Act. Nicolas Sarkozy expressed this idea of home more clearly when he warned that either you must love France or you leave France. The label of anti-national, currently used in India mostly against Muslims, serves the same purpose. Anti-national are all those who do not love and worship India as a Hindu home. This notion of nation-state as home and the coercive demand to love this home informs the politics of such Islamophobes as Geert Wilders, Marine Le Pen, Donald Trump, Narendra Modi, as well as many others. The slogans of Fortress Europe, Eurabia, as well as the manifesto of terrorist Anders Breivik are further examples of how Islamophobia is at once pervasive and aggressive. If Islamophobia is the outcome of the New World Order's need for a global enemy and the ever-increasing phenomenon of Domophilia, which is love for nation-state as home, then what is the solution? One solution to this obsessive love for home is to think of hotel instead. In a letter to his friend, Franz Kafka wrote, "I like hotel rooms. I am at home at once in hotel rooms, more than at home." In slight disagreement with Kafka, let me propose hostel as alternative to hotel. Unlike hotel, which is essentially a commercial enterprise, there is a sense of sociability and solidarity in hostel. I have spent almost 1/3 of my life living in different hostels, and I have fond memories of those times lived, and I feel attached to all those places. In short, my alternative of hostel to hotel is very close to the idea of anthropologist Arjunappa Roy and his notion of what he calls post-national belonging. Clearly, my alternative is futuristic. In the meanwhile, public intellectuals like myself have to deal with Islamophobia. Recall the violent reaction to the interview and how so many labels were thrown at a poor anthropologist for just one interview. These labels are a stark example of both Islamophobia and Domophilia in the present that all of us inhabit. Thank you.